Nick Saban has been putting on an absolute clinic at Alabama. Really, you could argue for the better part of like a decade and a half now, but in 2020, he's really been putting on a clinic. I'll tell you what, the best part to me about our 24/7 Sports YouTube channel is, and the Late Kick podcast feed, it's free to subscribe. You don't have to pay anything. I mean, the best things in life sometimes cost a lot of money, let's be real, but this is free. And that's why I love it so much, and that's why you should love it so much. And subscribe if you haven't already. 5-star reviews appreciated. But here's the thing. What does that have to do with Nick Saban? He's been putting on a clinic all offseason, and it's also been free. If you have been paying attention as a fan, as a coach, as an athlete, have you been paying attention? You know those stereotypes about age, and the older you get, the more set in your ways you are, and you stop learning, and you're slow to adjust. Well, Nick Saban regularly shatters those, and he has really to a critical degree in this offseason. Let's talk about all the issues that college programs have faced. And let's talk about how this dude has dealt with them. The first thing was recruiting. What was it? It was May, I wrote down the date, May 14th. Nick Saban joined us for about 20, 25 minutes, had a great talk with him, and I asked him about recruiting. At the time, in the 24/7 Sports team rankings, Alabama was ranked somewhere in the 40s. And so I asked, because it was obvious there were different approaches being taken in recruiting. I asked him, hey, how are you handling this? No camps, you can't go out on the road, the spring evaluation period has been shot, everyone's in quarantine. How are you going to handle this? And, a lot of the fans were freaking out, and he kind of yawned and shrugged his shoulders and said, we'll be all right. That's pretty much what he said. We'll be fine. We have confidence in the way that we're doing things. Today is September 3rd. Alabama is neck and neck with Ohio State for the #1 recruiting class in the country. And it is, September 3rd. So, they've got a ways to go before even the early signing date, if we still stay on track for that. He has put on a recruiting clinic, the likes of which you've even rarely seen if you're an Alabama fan. What was issue number 2? And we're obviously not going in chronological order here because a lot of people were, I'm talking about 5-alarm freaked out by losing the strength coach there, Scott Cochran. There were reputable people in the college football world who said, it's obvious things are crumbling up there, man. This is a sign that things are shifting in the SEC. We fast forward a few months, and I talk to people at Alabama regularly. I don't know that I have ever seen this collective level of excitement about players, period, much less personnel and staff, as I've seen about the new sports science and strength conditioning duo they hired in Matt Ray and David Ballou out of Indiana. When we've talked about that, a lot of you have been sarcastic. A lot of you have said, oh, really? I'm supposed to be scared of guys that were at IMG Academy a few years ago in Indiana? I don't really care how you feel about it. I would advise you to watch Alabama this year and in the coming years and take a look at how thin that injury list is so far this offseason. I hope this desk is made of wood. I just knocked on it. Going to be a big difference. Let me just, from everybody there to a man, going to be a big difference. So weathered that storm quite nicely, and it turns out it really wasn't a storm at all. It was more an opportunity. What's issue number 3 been? COVID, obviously. And again, this is in no particular order. COVID and player safety. And all the freak out over what was going to happen when you get kids back on campus. And not only have they, and to the conference's credit, a number of other teams in the conference been at the forefront of this, but hey, Nick Saban's also been at the forefront on messaging, and they've probably handled it in about as spectacular a fashion as a program, as an organization, as anyone. You haven't seen headlines, even as the general population at the University of Alabama has been in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Football program, taking care of themselves, basically bubbling themselves. Issue number 4, and it's cropped up big time in the SEC, opt-outs, roster churn. Now again, this stuff could change tomorrow, but I've listened to a number of his players talk about this, and I've listened to himself, Nick Saban, talk about this. His players sound just like him. When talking about this, his players have sounded just like him. I don't know if people understand how big a skill that is to be in your, late 60s, early 70s, and to get 18 and 19-year-old kids to adopt your mentality. You know how hard that is? 18, 19-year-old kids who are the best in the world at what they do, by the way, to adopt your mentality, but yet they sound like robots. They're all singing the same tune. And so I don't get the sense that you have a whole lot of opt-outs coming from Alabama, and that's as your neighbors down in Baton Rouge are dealing with it blow after blow after blow. And I listen to Alabama's players, and I don't think it's coming. And the other thing, and I really couldn't care less one way or the other where you fall on this. I mean, when I say I couldn't care less, I mean I really, really, really couldn't care less. But the whole social unrest deal that's happened over the past few weeks, if you were to just hit mute on your TV and just watch the images, I would imagine there are some PR firms out there who are being paid millions to tens of millions of dollars who would not be able to deliver a more picture-perfect result than what Alabama's ended up getting out of all this. Do you understand what that right there does? Again, let me pause and reiterate, regardless of what you think one way or the other. If I'm Nick Saban, my job's really to listen, and so that's what he's done. And I listened to what he said. I didn't really find anything all that controversial, to be honest with you. But my goodness, PR firms, free of charge, haven't charged a dime. Watch and learn. And then, by the way, if you don't think that that's a clinic being put on, just trust me when we hear some things that are happening behind the scenes with other programs, that is a clinic that's being put on. And that is why that team in Tuscaloosa is once again going to be one of the very few favorites to win the national championship this year.